wow, what power, what control to be on the air like that. There was nothing like it.
Lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and with me again, my favorite editor in comics, Shelly Bond, and I have some awesome guests with her as well to talk about heavy rotation. We have Barbara, Rod, and Mike, and we're going to talk about the Kickstarter that I believe as of today should have 10 days left, probably about a week left once this interview goes live. So welcome, everyone.
Hey.
Thank you.
Hey, Ryan, I know you tell everyone who you speak with that they're your favorite editor.
No, I don't talk to any other editors. You are my favorite editor.
All right, well, that makes sense. If you don't talk to other editors or they won't talk to you, I get it. I'm still flat.
You should be, and just for proof, when I put my Michael Conrad and Becky Cloonan interview, I also mentioned that you're my favorite editor in there as well.
I'm sure they were shocked. They hate me.
No, they love you. They were. Michael was more shocked that my intro to his work was "Hey Amateur." He thought that was pretty cool.
It is cool.
Off top, this is a very unique project that you're putting together. It's marrying two of my loves, music and comics, in together. You're also doing. It's also about college DJs and stuff like that, and college radio. I was wondering first, Shelly, if you could kind of explain the project, and then I want to know how all of you guys got onto this project with her, because I know that this is the first time you guys are doing stuff in comics.
Actually, sort of, not really.
Okay.
Well, Brother Mike and Rod actually kind of do something that dovetails into comics with their animated short series of Brother Mike tapes.
Right.
Which is super cool, which I totally want us to jump into fast. But basically the 2-minute story is that one of our fellow DJs, Glenn Rauscher, actually put a whole bunch of us together on a Zoom call. I think it was last October. And it was so cool to see everybody after all this time, because it's been like, I think 32 years, maybe. Barbara probably knows for sure, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, that's about right.
Jesus.
And while we were all chatting, and by the way, no one recognized me, which was totally fine. And I didn't recognize a couple of people. But while we were chatting, I thought, oh my God, we have to like put a comic book together, because I've thought of it a few times, but I never really had enough spare time. So it just seemed like the perfect thing to do as this pandemic still throttles us. I thought, why the hell not? Let's bring everybody together. And as long as they trust me, and I know some of them don't because they've already recused themselves, but why not? Let's just have fun. Let's kick it up. And so we went back to Kickstarter. Ryan, you know how much I love Kickstarter. You helped me with the last one.
Yeah. Like I said, I think when we talked yesterday, I expect I'm going to love it, but I try to like not spoil too much with myself. If I see your name launching a new Kickstarter, I automatically just hit back, and then I look at what it is that I back, But I want to know, like, what can we expect in the book, and what has the experience been like for you guys that, haven't really done a project like this before? I know it's going to be awesome because, Shelly's curating it, and everything she does is awesome.
Clearly, my father sends Ryan monthly checks to sell. Barbara, why don't you take that question, because you've known me the longest, and you've also been working really closely with me in terms of the editing side.
I'm sorry, it's how what we've done so far.
Well, like what everyone can expect and stuff, and what the experience has been like so far.
Well, what everybody can expect is a really interesting collection of everybody's really varied perspectives of different things that they experienced during college radio. And, even though it was 32 years ago, they're universal experiences. People have written back to us on the Kickstarter page that they were college DJs in the 90s or 10 years ago or whatever. And it's really the same experiences that people have, where, they're kind of you know, a bit left of center, and then they find a whole bunch of people who are like them, who love music and art, and they get to share it with a bunch of people. So that's a pretty cool thing. And then the experience so far, hey, I trust Shelly with everything.
And again,
yeah.
someone who's on my father's payroll, Barbara Bacon.
That's right. Thank you, Dr. Mickey. No, seriously, Shelly is awesome. And her work that she's done is amazing. And it's been a lot of fun.
I think it's been great just bringing everybody together to just see what happens when we collaborate. I mean, to me, comics is the ultimate art form. And I've said before that my editing style is probably different from anyone else's in comics because of the foundation that I had at Ithaca College. You know, I was a TBR major, but I took a lot of film classes. I took as many art classes as I could. We had like the smallest art department, but I think I took every class offered, like 2D design, 3D design, sculpture, like anything, because I just wanted to immerse myself in the curriculum because I knew my dad would kick my ass if I didn't get any worth out of the money he put into my education. And it's Barbara's fault that I became a DJ. Yeah. Barbara was my best friend the last couple of years in college, and she showed me the ropes because I certainly wouldn't have known what I was doing without her. And she was actually a drive time DJ by the end, I think senior year. You did a drive.
Like, were you guys ever fans of comics? Like before this?
Well, I'll be honest here. I had no idea who Shelly Bond was when I was in college, but I met her on a reunion Zoom, and sort of was surprised to find out she'd had this career in comics. And I had actually had an accidental career in comics, and had done a newspaper comics for a while, about 10 years ago, and through that got sort of into mostly like a lot of indie comics. But you know, it's weird to like sort of be doing a comic strip but not really know the business so well. So sort of like getting a crash course in it while you're trying to do it, and then sort of abandoned it. And the reason I think she paid attention again was that since I stopped doing the comic strip, I was looking for something new to do, and I tried to sort of teach myself animation. And I remembered that my friend Mike Cohen from school had these tapes that he would always play of secret recordings of his parents that he'd made when he would go home from college and on break. And he did it for years and years. And I just remember them being like so like natural and funny. And I thought it'd be a great piece of audio to learn animation on. So it turned out to be great because you don't have to worry about people's performance or stuff you have to write for them. So I asked him for the tapes, he sent them to me. I went through and sort of edited down sort of a 2-3 minute, piece of shtick and animated it. And we put it online. And I remember putting it online like on a Friday at the office, and then checking on Reddit like halfway home and seeing that it was like getting some attention. And then by Saturday morning, it was up in the top 10, which is like, impossible to do. And there was just something about it that sort of struck a chord in people, because I think they sort of recognized their parents in it, or just had not seen sort of like, that sort of real audio married with animation. And so, it got picked up by blogs and things like that. And it was kind of like unfortunate to have like success with your first attempt, because then you can never sort of live up to that again, but you can try. So when Shelly sort of, connected again with all of us, she found out that we'd been doing this, and then I found out what she'd been doing in her career. And it's always interesting to me, and I'm very happy that she, asked us to be a part of it, because it's a lot of fun and still like very, unexpected. It's not the kind of thing I have been like looking to do, but Mike could probably tell you what he was looking to do. Mike, why did you record your parents when you were young? Well, it was a naughty thing to do. It was a naughty thing to do.
I recorded my parents because if you remember, I know everyone's seen Full Metal Jacket, Kubrick's second last film from '87, I believe. The opening, the first 40 minutes with the drill sergeant, and how he yelled at the troops, and how it was scary and how it was funny. And I remember seeing the movie when it came out in the theater like 4 times. And I remember the audience reaction was always different. Like some people would laugh, some people were afraid to laugh, some people were like, and that's how my father was. My father was scary yet funny. And I recorded him because I thought he needed to be recorded, because I had to play these tapes for my friends and say, you're not going to believe this, but here's the tape. And this is my dad yelling at me. And it really, it really kicked in like in college. I'd come back from a break, I'd be at college away from home, and I'd go back to college, and we'd just be hanging out in the dorm rooms doing whatever at midnight. And
you know what you were doing.
right. And
what we were all doing.
In between listening to Pink Floyd and the Grateful Dead, I'd be like, "Oh, you guys got to hear this tape, man." And I remember people just like asking me to rewind, like, "Oh, you got to rewind that line. You got to rewind your dad saying 3/4 of the parents don't give a shit," because like nobody gets such a hard time from their parents as I do. 3/4 of parents don't give a shit. And this was funny because this was the real deal, and nobody else was recording their parents. So I was recording my parents, and I would do it for years, and I always thought something needed to be done with them. Somebody once suggested I should get on stage and have a cardboard cutout of my dad and do my lines live. But actually, when Rod's like, "Why don't I animate a tape and see what happens?" I thought.
Well, to be fair, you were getting on stage and playing tapes as part of the show.
I was getting on stage with a boombox and playing tapes of my parents at an open mic, at a spoken word thing, and it was people were hysterical because not many people have recorded their parents, and so that's how I started taping my parents.
And a lot of people get sentimental too. A lot of people say like, "Oh my God, I wish I'd recorded my parents,"
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope my daughter never records me, because I've heard myself while I've been recording something, and then I'm yelling from the room, and then when I edit it, I hear myself, and I'm like, "Dang, dude, I sound like an asshole."
I called accidentally. I butt dialed a friend while I was yelling at my kids, and so he has this recording of me like just being the worst parent imaginable. So yeah, nobody wants to have that documented.
Definitely not.
I have to say, when I saw Brother Mike posting these clips, like about maybe a year ago, I think that's when I really started to think about, hey, we gotta really connect. Some of the people that I went to school with, that let's just be clear, Rod wasn't the only person in this group who didn't remember me, and I'm only going to tease him once about it, but Brother Mike didn't remember me either. And it's like, so it's okay. I'm not offended. It's all good. I think only Barbara remembers me because she's been paid to remember me because I was her roommate. But it must be said that I thought that the animated clips were so good that like I just really wanted to connect with Mike and Rod just to see like what they've been up to because of all the indie comics that I've been making. And I thought there was such a great Beavis and Butthead like animated style to it. Like I love the simplicity because I feel like so much animation is overdone now. Everybody's trying to outdo each other, that there was something just so old school about it that I loved. And by the way, Rod is doing an incredible job. He actually has a 2-page sequential story starring Brother Mike and their station manager, Chris Wheatley, and it's hilarious. So Rod is a natural storyteller. I want to see him blush on camera right now. But seriously, I think there's so many talented people in this group. So, being DJs kind of brought us together because I think we were all obsessed with music. Even those people who didn't know each other, we were all connected just by the fact that we loved working for the station, and I loved the control, to me, I was the kind of DJ who was just like, look, this is my set list and you can call me on the listener line and I'm going to pretend that I'm going to play your song, but don't bet on it and don't wait for it because this is my shift. That was me, I'm sad to say, and I haven't changed.
For me, like I didn't go to college, so I don't know the whole college radio thing, and I'm not even sure, I guess, if that's still a thing. I mean, I imagine it maybe is. What kind of stories can we kind of expect in here? Is this all going to be personal experiences that we see or that we're going to read about? I know there's a mix of comics and prose.
It's a full assortment, Ryan. It's what's going to be so cool about it. Unlike some of my other Kickstarters that you've been involved with, it's on a smaller scale. So it's a 48-page periodical, but I promise you the spot gloss varnish, the 5th color neon that you've come to expect from my work. But
I don't know what any of those words mean.
Oh, but you will. You will. And then you will never question my taste in neon colors again, which by the way, I wore for the occasion. But I think the thing.
Or my members only jacket, a vintage members only jacket from the 80s.
Very cool. It's so
yellow.
That's amazing.
It's so clean. I could not have kept
right?
something clean for 30 minutes, let
No,
alone
it's not
30
mine.
years.
eBay came mint condition.
Just for this interview, Rod?
Yeah, what's that?
Did you get it just for this interview?
No, I've worn it like 3 times in my life.
Oh, dude, you should have lied. You should have said it was for the interview.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's for the interview.
So basically, just the type of stories we're doing. We're of course sharing some of our own experiences working at the station, but there's like a universal appeal here as well. There's a little bit of the history of college radio.
Sure.
I'm going to have a couple of Hey Amateur pages, like Heather Goldberg, who is also a significant contributor and sort of partner in crime in terms of putting the book together. She's doing a Hey Amateur, how to queue up a record and do a segue. So it's going to be part like living in the 80s, being crazy college students, and also just some really cool, like practical, technical information, because I know Rod was saying his kids have no idea what it means to like hot splice or like audio splice.
I don't either.
Yeah, but let me answer your question about college radio in general, because I mean, like one of my favorite radio stations in Los Angeles is a college radio station, KXLU from Loyola Marymount, and they are sort of a real combination of like freeform radio, which is what a lot of people think of college radio as being, just people getting on the air and playing whatever they want. And there are people at that station who aren't students who have been there. One of them has literally been there since the early 70s. She's just celebrating her like 42nd anniversary or something. So she's like friends with Iggy Pop, and our station, because we were part of a sort of a known television radio program, was attempted to run a lot more professionally. So it was not free form. It was very scheduled. It was student run. It was I was a station manager for 2 years. We had sort of a faculty, not faculty, but I guess I was like sort of an adult in the room, paid advisor. But the rest of it was students, and it was really not free form. Which I think was good for for the program that it was in. But just like when people say college radio, they often think of like people just getting on and playing whatever they want. And now like my sons have gone to college, and they're literally, people will just like sort of put together a Spotify list and get on the air and just play stuff. And in fact, their microphone broke, and the school wouldn't pay to replace it, so people were literally just going on the air and just playing music without any talk sets. And I'm like, that's not even radio. That's just like, I don't know what that is. It's just like a music service. I mean, like, so yeah, I think it was a very structured program that we went through.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a good thing as well, and it was a dot. It was like a dot rotation.
Meaning?
Mike, can you explain that for the room?
Yeah, there was you couldn't overplay something. If something, I don't remember exactly what it was. I actually have I have a bunch of stuff here. Still with the playlists on. I have like a Birds record, and a Pete Seeger record, and I have a couple of David Bowie records.
No
from
way.
the radio station. I do. I have The Man Who Fell to Earth.
The Man Who Sold.
I'm sorry. Yes, The Man Who Sold the World. Yes, I have a WICB copy of that.
Wow.
Nice. We want to see it.
Yeah.
I will. I can go get it if I can.
But it was all manual, so if it was like a song was like a blue dot, you could
Right.
only play it certain times of the hour. If it was a white dot, it was even more rare. And then they'd have like a sticker on the album, and they'd have a sheet of paper taped to the album where you'd write your name and the date and the time that you played it, and,
Exactly.
and so that
crazy.
people could see the last time. Yeah, now it's all like fed into a computer and just spat back out again. But
some things you could only play like once a week or once every 2 weeks. Like if it was a deep cut, it's like, well, don't overplay this. It's a deep cut, and you can only play it after midnight. It's such a deep, like this deep psychedelic first cut, only after midnight, once every 2 weeks.
And that's also talking about control. That's how the program director controls the format of the station. So
Right.
if you feel like it's going too indie, too experimental, they can sort of like program it so that the more mainstream stuff, or the genre that they're trying to identify with, moves to the top and is more likely for people to tune into the station and hear.
Or you could switch the dots.
You could do that. You could switch the dots.
Could. Yeah, I mean, so I sort of came in at the end of, I graduated in 90, so it was right at the end of sort of what was new wave. And I think college radio was trying to become its own thing, or sort of own its own brand. And I remember we were calling it modern rock by then, and everybody was like, what is that? Like, well, I don't even know what that is. But there was a real sort of effort probably by that guy who got paid to be the the grown up in the room, not from the students, to legitimize kind of the format, so to actually like build an audience and play what people wanted. And so of course then you have all sorts of students who feel like that's a sellout cop-out attitude and we should be playing whatever we want. I remember getting into like a horrible dispute with somebody who wanted to add ministry into rotation, and we didn't want it, and it.
Wait, what? Can we cut his mic? He just said he doesn't want ministry on the rotation.
Yeah,
but you're not talking about the sympathy ministry. You're talking about like the land of rape and honey and.
Oh, okay,
They changed their style, and it's like for a student, music director to say like, this is awesome, I'm going to play the shit out of this. And then to have this sort of like fake, like student, like infrastructure of like, no, that doesn't really fit with what we're trying to do. And it was a real problem for many years after I graduated with this particular person. It still weighs on my conscience. It's like, should we have been like sort of leading the way more? And like, I remember at the very end of my, my time there, like calling my friend up and saying, hey, listen to this song I'm about to play, and putting on, it was Soundgarden, Loud Love. And that was like to me, that was like that's where like, grunge sort of all started. I moved to LA right after that, and everything was Nirvana and Soundgarden and Smashing Pumpkins. And that felt like, if ever I played, my girlfriend at the time was a couple of years ahead of me. So she introduced me to all the OMD and ABC and Talk stuff that people had been playing from like 85, 86, 87. And so I liked that stuff. And if I would play it, I'd get a call from the station manager saying like, yeah, you're playing all that bing bong music, and we're trying to really sort of like, create this kind of like, this modern rock aesthetic now, like we should be sort of like shifting gears. So it's funny to be like a college student and get caught up in those kind of dilemmas, artistic dilemmas.
Yeah. But it was so cool to like learn about like business in a lot of respects, and how to deal with people, right? I mean, it was political. The other thing, and it must be said, and Barbara, I know I'm gonna toss this to you, Barbara, but another thing about those albums, it was vinyl. Come on, people, vinyl. King and Queen. We used to write each other notes like on the album, because you could really tell a lot about someone by the white dots or the yellow they played. And so, that was a big thing.
Or sometimes you'd hear somebody else's favorite white dot or yellow dot, their deep album cut. Sometimes it was an album cut from a fairly obscure band, and then be like, oh, I like this. And now you had two people. Yeah, I think we did that a lot.
We did.
Yeah. You got me into a lot of stuff.
I guess that's the other thing that Mike's holding up that is confusing, because it wasn't sort of a single format station. I'm in the alternative modern rock, new wave, whatever it was called at the time, was sort of the majority of the programming. And then there'd be specialty shows in the mornings, like you'd have a folk show, you'd have a jazz show. And then on weekends, it sort of like really went all over. Mike was known for hosting Classic Rock Sunday for many years. And they had like an urban show, which was like at the time, which was like, a bunch of new rap. I remember like hearing De La Soul for the first time on the station, and it's just amazing, change, in music styles right there. And what else did they have on the weekend?
City Rhythms was a precursor too to like hip hop and dub and stuff.
We had an African show. I hosted that for a while.
Oh, that's so cool. Now, I wanted to ask Mike, did you ever do any artist-only specialty shows?
I believe I did. I think on the Classic Rock Sunday, I did that with Pam Palma for maybe 2 or 3 years. And we'd get these like, freshmen to like write these, come up with, we're going to feature Creedence Clearwater Revival, or we're going to feature, I don't know, like the Rolling Stones. And we'd get these like young kids. It's like, hey, you want, write something for us. And they'd write these, they'd do all this research. They'd go to the library and dig up the microfiche or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Back in 1985.
Microfiche.
And we get them to like write these like biographies, and we'd like feature their songs. And yeah, we did like it would be like an hour for the classic rock Sunday show. And
I remember
yeah,
that.
but I mean, I don't recall doing any artists only during the format stuff during the new wave. I was very much, not to change the subject, but I was very much into playing the new stuff and then mixing in with the old stuff, but having it sound good. Like, can I play the Smiths and the Who together? Like, I think there's a way to do it. I remember playing.
Oh yeah.
I remember "Won't Get Fooled Again" ending into "How Soon Is Now," and I was like, what a great seg. They're both British, 15 years apart or whatever. It's like it can be done, and I don't mean everything from the classic rock era, but I mean certain bands that were influential, like the Who and David Bowie, and certain
a lot of the mod revival bands for sure.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And to me, that was so much a part of it as well. I think that's where ICB as a radio station also like was embraced by the town of Ithaca. It wasn't just like a legit radio station, 5,500 watts, huge broadcasting area, FCC licensed, approved, but we were a huge part of the town. So we had a dance club called The Haunt, which was like a shack, reggae bar shack by day, but 2 nights a week it was Dance Blast. So that was, I mean, Barbara and I, like, we can legit tell you, we spent 5-6 hours getting ready for Dance Blast.
At least.
And, we were by the book, we studied too, but like, there was nothing like going to the Haunt and dancing all night. And so many of the DJs like from the station would spin there. And also just the record shops. Like, I know Mike and a couple of other people, I think, worked at Chelsea Records. There were so many connections with the town of Ithaca and the communication school. And I feel like we were so lucky to have that and to experience, not just the regular, I said regular in air quotes, college experience, but like, we got our hands dirty, from like first day, first semester. Someone threw a Bolex in my hand and I was like, what? This is the coolest thing ever. I like took it apart. I'm sure I broke it too, but it was, and there was nothing cooler going into those little areas, like across from the radio station where we could like the little booths where we could actually practice segues and like make our own mixtapes. We really had, I think we had a lot of freedom and we had so many great opportunities to explore our majors and like, play cool music.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous. I feel like I would have loved to do something like what you guys did, because I absolutely love music. And I used to, I mean, not anymore, but now that there's like digital content, but I used to make myself mix CDs all the time. I used to love doing that and like picking up, a bunch of different songs from different albums, even different genres. Sometimes I'd have some like really weird shit on one CD.
So tell us why.
You've never had the joy of making a mixtape on a cassette where you have to decide, like, at the end of the cassette you have to stop it and figure out, okay, I got like 2 minutes and 40 seconds left. I can fit a real short song in, or I can just leave that blank, and then you got to, like, when you flip the side, you're gonna have to rewind it to play side 2.
Yeah, no, I didn't have to deal with any of that. By the time I was doing it, CDs are already out at that point. I don't know. I think I probably started doing it when I was like 12 or 13. So like a little over 20 years ago. Since I love music so much, I was curious, are we going to get any playlists from you guys in this book?
Yes, like probably more than you ever expected. We actually have to give Heather props for this, but she set up a Spotify like playlist so that everybody that's involved in the comic book is going to get an hour to program their own music. And, it's suggested that, you can follow the old rotation, like whatever the elderly, and that's what I'm calling us because we are super old and it's embarrassing. Whatever we can, Barbara is over. And I was like, Barbara is classic Barbara. Like, I don't think Barbara ever had a shift where Game Theory wasn't featured in some capacity, right?
Freshman year, before I knew about them.
Okay.
There was a time in my life before time.
Fair enough. Yes. So everybody is weighing in. I'm not sure if Mike and Rod did their Spotify lists yet, but I have 2. I have one called Totally Wired Overnight, because as much as I loved like the 10 to 2 shifts that I had and the 7 to 10 Friday night shift that I did, where clearly no one remembers me, but that's okay because people were already partying by that point. My favorite shifts were my overnights because I felt like master control on top of the world in my own spaceship, playing music for myself and maybe 1 or 2 other people who might have been out there in the world listening. So that's what I wrote about. That was my story contribution to the comic. But there are so many amazing things that you will see throughout the comic. And I think that, you know, you don't have to even know a college DJ to like want to be involved with a book and to like pledge. Barbara, I think you said it best. Barbara did a lot of the writing for the actual campaign story because I think it must be said when Barbara and I were roommates, she would read me a lot of her writing for her creative writing and English classes. And I used to crack up and I used to think she was like one of the greatest writers I ever met.
Oh.
And I really wanted to publish her work. Like as a comic book editor for 32 years, like I've worked with tons of writers, some good, some not so good, some great, some crap, but I really wanted Barbara to write a comic and also write a prose story. And she's done such amazing work so far for the book. But what she said was that whether you love the 80s, whether you just love some of the music, whether your mom was a DJ, you know, whether you just want to find out about the, you know, why kids were running around with razor blades, the audio production majors, how to carry razor blades, this is a comic book for you, heavy rotation. And we've got levels, backing pledge levels for every bank account. This is not one of those Kickstarters where you have to like invest like your wife's savings or your kid's college like account. Like we've got $3 for the PDF all the way up to $75, which gets you a signed Mike Allred 8x10 Geek Clay print of
you almost got me with that one too. I almost upped my pledge. I'm like, I really can't. I can't afford this right now.
You keep throwing compliments at all of us, not just me, and I might throw one in for you.
I do want to know, like, the 80s was, I mean, I didn't experience it firsthand, but I know a little bit about like the change in music scene. Like I'm huge fan of like all genres of music, but hip hop is one of my favorites. And I know that the 80s is when like things really like blew up more so. Cause I know it started 78. I think 70, 79 is when it kind of started, maybe 77. So what was that like for you guys? Cause I mean, from my knowledge, it took over a lot of like the country, like it kind of like, right? So I was just wondering how, this is really just personal. I just want to know what that was like back then with the emergence of hip hop.
You know, what's interesting is we had the one show, City Rhythms, which was Saturday afternoons. It was probably like a 5-hour show. And, you know, one of we have like these 20 questions that we're answering. And one of the questions that we had was, what do you wish that you were into when it first came out? And that was mine. It was like there were these couple of guys, Ray and Mark, and they did such an awesome job with City Rhythms, and Ray put together that 2 playlists today. And I think like, where the hell was my head at the time? This is some really amazing music that I listen to now.
You were just theory.
What?
You were just into Game Theory and Brian Ferry, I think.
That's it, yeah. And Elvis Costello. And it was almost like at that time I had attention for just like a very small
Anybody
universe.
who's seen that clip with Mark Goodman in the interview with David Bowie sees that, like, yeah, the MTV missed the boat. I mean, they kept them separate. They thought they were like catering to their main audience, that they could isolate this to another show. My kids are now like finding Yo MTV Raps on cable late at night and watching it religiously. And what's amazing is like all the lyrics were clean. Like I don't even know what they were rapping about at the time. If like nowadays, like, you know, like you can't use any of those words back then. Like it was like a challenge, you know. But it holds up, you know. And I actually think, you know, the music industry missed the boat at the time.
Yes. Yeah.
They're behind the curve.
I recall being in college radio and hearing this new song Africa Bambaataa with Johnny Lydon.
Oh
Yes.
my God, what a great song.
And at the time I was like, oh, I've never heard anything like this before. This is so unique. And it was like hip hop, it was rap, it was punk, it was guitar. And I think it was very representative of what our format was at the college radio. I mean, we were playing stuff like Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark and the Stray Cats. And that was part of the post-punk new wave thing. And OMD and the Stray Cats were very different. OMD was a synth, keyboard driven band. And then you had the Smiths, like a pre-shoegazer kind of whiny, melodic. And then the Stray Cats, there was this rockabilly revival. So the whole 80s new wave thing encompassed, I thought, a lot of different genres like rock and synth, and it was amazing. And then I heard World Destruction, and I'm like, wow, this is like representative of the 80s to me. Time Zone, is that the name of Time Zone?
Yeah, Time Zone.
I have to say, I was doing a shift, and I'll never forget this. My Rick Goldstein, who actually is my cousin, he actually had the record. He pushed me out of the DJ chair and put it on during my shift. I was mortified because as much as I was teasing it earlier, I really played by the books. I did follow the rules. I might not have played somebody's song from the listener line, but I did follow the dots. So he came into the station and he was like, I've got this album. You have to hear this song, World Destruction. And he literally pushed me out of the way to play it. And I was certain I was going to get kicked off the station. But one thing I want to mention to Ryan's question, Sanford Green, who I know Ryan knows, who's one of the greatest artists.
Yes.
Period. I mean, one of the greatest artists in comics, but one of the greatest artists alive. I love him. He's amazing. He's actually going to be doing the illustration for a piece that all the City Rhythms guys are contributing. They're going to interview each other. But what I wanted to say is when I was talking to Sanford, when I was trying to trick him into contributing, he's my artist on a freelance book I edit called Bitter Root. I had no idea that he was really into those sounds, and that those early hip hop bands really caught him at his formative years. And he told me that he was in 9th grade, around in the late 80s. And he said when he heard that music, Run DMC and De La Soul and even Janet Jackson, he wanted to be a DJ. And then he saw Spike Lee direct Rob Liefeld in a Levi's ad. And that's when he decided to be a comic book artist. So I thought, oh my God, he has to contribute. But one more point I want to make, and I'm really not going to talk anymore because I don't want to dominate this podcast, but Brother Mike, I have to ask you this. For me, Blondie's Rapture started everything off for me for rap and hip hop, but it was the Clash Sandinista that is everything. And I've said this before in a podcast. I think I might have even said it to Ryan, but it was 3 albums, all killer, no filler. It was everything. It was rockabilly, it was dub, it was ska, it was the future. It's 1980. That's where everything begins for me. Do you agree?
Well, now that you mention it, yeah, the Sandinista is an excellent example of. I mean, it's amazing that it was 1980, because when you said it, I had to think for a minute and oh yeah, 1980, the same year, Springsteen's The River came out, which is a fine record, in its own right. But yeah, Sandinista is representative of what was happening at the time and what continued to happen for the rest of the 80s. And it was English, it was American, it was black, it was white. It was they like you said, they literally covered everything. And I don't know if I'd agree with all killer, no filler. And I do love the record and I love the Clash.
We're gonna have to take this off. We have to take this offline to fight about it, but I'm gonna say it was their love letter to New York City. I mean, They were hanging out, right? I mean, listen, I wasn't allowed to hang out in New York City back in 1980, but God, I could go back in time. I would be right there with Joe Strummer, because that's what they did. And the reason why I love the album, I know you don't think it's perfect. I think it's perfect. They were having so much fun. And that's also what the 80s were about, I think, in terms of music.
Right. They were having, I'll tell you, Yeah, they were absolutely having fun. I mean, it is. I mean, I think there's a bunch of perfect. I think you could twiddle it down and make it a perfect record. I'm glad they made it through, 6 sides. There was a time in high school when I was getting into the Clash and I had Sandinista, and I would start my day before getting ready for school by putting on the Magnificent Seven and turning it up loud and like
Yep.
brushing my teeth, taking a shower, and doing all that stuff and like dancing in my room. And I would be off to high school, and I did that for maybe 3 or 4 months. Like not even the rest of the record, just song one,
Yeah.
side one, Magnificent Seven. Such a great song.
It is such a great song. It started almost every radio shift that I ever did. And I'm so shocked you didn't know me. I'm surprised you didn't even say, hey, who's that cool girl who plays the Magnificent Seven like all the time?
Ryan, if you've never heard Sandinista, I think you should check it out. Based on what you like, I think you might enjoy the album. I don't know, but maybe you
Love
know.
I mean, I'm here for all the music recommendations. There's no genre that I won't listen to.
Right.
A lot of the modern stuff I'm not too much a fan of. Like in terms of, especially like, like I said, I love hip hop. Like I don't even really listen to a lot of the mainstream because I feel like they're not really saying anything with their music. And I'm not trying to be insulting, but like I can point to a record on the radio and then I can point to one from somebody that's not on the mainstream label. And it's like, hey, that's why a lot of the stuff I listen to in terms of hip hop is all like, well, I call it underground, but it's really just like indie, small labels.
Yeah, my kids came downstairs, a couple months ago and said Mad Villain died. I'm like, who? And like it like, sends you down a path. What's that?
It was MF Doom.
MF Doom. I'm sorry, MF Doom. Wait, who's Mad Villain? Did I just kill someone who's not dead?
Well, that's the album.
Yeah. That's the album. Yeah, MF Doom. Yeah. So then it just sends me down a path of like, here's someone I had no idea who this was and has such a following. And what I love like on Spotify now, just finding a song that you like and going in and making a station from the song. You literally go to like, pick a song and then go to radio. And and just the algorithm, whatever they have, I don't know if they're people or AI sending songs your way, but like the playlist you can get off of that sometimes can be an incredible run of songs,
Oh, I agree. I think that's one of the coolest things about music is that like everybody can kind of DJ now with these apps like Spotify and Pandora and stuff like that. I discovered so much stuff from there. Like I try not to thumbs up because when you do that, you kind of limit what the station will play. So if it's something I really, really love, I'll thumbs up. But other than that, it's like, because then it just play the same bands or the same artists over and over. I do want to ask too, because to me, like music has gotten me out of like really dark places, through my life. I've used music when I'm happy. I've used it when I'm sad. I've used it like, and there was a very dark period in my life where sometimes all I had, I was by myself and all I had was like my old school iPod that had like 10,000 songs on it, and like that's all I would do is I would listen to it and it would kind of get me out of whatever mood I was in. What would you say is the song that had maybe a very profound effect on you that has still stuck with you to this day?
I would say, so Game Theory was my favorite band in college, and they released an album called Lolita Nation, which is in '87, and it's still my favorite album. And there was a song called Dripping with Looks, and it was really about like self-loathing. And that just blew me away. It was like, yeah, I get you, you get me, and we're all kind of in a crappy place. That's all right. That's all right. We're not alone.
I would have to say that Elton John's version of Pinball Wizard, which is a song written by Pete Townsend of The Who, I heard that on the radio in 1974. I must have been 9 years old, or 1975, and I became completely obsessed with that version of that song. It was melodic, it was catchy, it was poppy, it was fast, and there was something about the way that Elton John's band was playing it. I hadn't even heard. I'd heard of The Who, but I wasn't into them. And I just love the melodic pop of that, which is representative of my taste. Give me a catchy hook. It could be Paul Simon, it can be the Ramones, it can be LL Cool J. I like something that's catchy that I can sing along with. That's going to stick in my head. I want something to stick in my head because that's it had an impact on me. That comes to mind when you ask what was significant. And still, And I finally heard the Who version. I'm like, wow, Elton John's version is much better than this. But I have a lot, but that comes to mind.
That's funny. I just real quick. That's funny you say that you don't like the original as much as the cover. And
Right.
I would say for me, that song "Hurt" by 9 Inch Nails that Johnny, to me, like that song, like when I heard, I got chills the first time I heard it, because like at that point was like in one of my darkest times. And when I heard the original, I'm like, to me, it didn't hit the same. It didn't like give me chills. Like certain songs just like my whole, like I feel it, and that Johnny Cash. So I think it's really cool to hear somebody else say it, because I don't often hear people saying they like a cover of a song as much as they like the original.
Actually, I'll chime in and say, it's hard for me to pick one, but I think kind of like what Mike was saying, like in 1974, I was at summer camp and I heard Rebel Rebel on the radio, and I just fell in love with David Bowie. And even though that isn't the song that's like my go-to song, I think I would have to say Station to Station, because it's 10 minutes and 8 seconds song, 8 seconds long. And I love the Berlin years. Like I find that whole trilogy fascinating. But I also think David Bowie's cover of Bruce Springsteen's "It's Hard to Be a Saint in the City" is like one of my favorite cover tunes ever. So I just wanted to put that in writing on record.
Bowie's "Wild as the Wind" is one of my favorite cover tunes.
Yeah, it's really good too. Also from Station to Station.
Yes.
And we both played. I think, Barbara, you and I would write each other notes on that.
Yeah, I think so. It's because of you.
Right?
You got me into it.
We were going through those deep cuts together. Even though we were mixed together, we'd see each other anyway. Better on the album because we could.
Just to throw this in, since we're talking about Bowie, I was a freshman at Ithaca College. I think it was September 1983, and we took a little road trip, me and a couple of pals, to see David Bowie in Syracuse. And it was my first time seeing David Bowie in concert it was the Let's Dance album was out. So it was the Serious Moonlight Tour. And it was and he had become actually really popular at that time. He was, went from playing arenas to playing stadiums. And it was fantastic. I just want to throw that in, since we've been mentioning Bowie the entire time. I love David Bowie.
I mean, he's amazing. So
amazing. Yeah.
He seems to be a through line for everybody, at least that has been working on the radio station on this project.
Not me. I mean, he's okay, but
What? I said, cut his mic, Ryan.
I'm shaking my head. I'm shaking my head at you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No. Listen, what I have to say that, yeah, I think that it would be very rare to like talk to anybody that's working on this project who doesn't have a connection to Bowie. And in fact, Heather Goldberg writes an amazing prose story about what happened the day of the Challenger disaster in '86. And she had a radio shift that night, and she played Starman. And that's it's probably our most somber piece. I have to say, I think most of the contributions have been pretty lively and fun, satirical, even Rod's. Although now I'm not sure I'm going to run Rod's because of what I've been running. Anyway,
I got introduced to Bowie. Was the Blue Jean album? Like I remember his cover of God. His cover of God Only Knows is my favorite Bowie.
Is that a joke?
I know. What? That's got to be. Come on.
I have 2 words for you.
Yeah.
No, I have 1 word for you.
Here's what, I don't know why you guys think you can't narrow it down to one song. It's impossible.
No.
Music, I mean, and you guys are talking about it too, that like the greatest thing to me about music is like the stuff that's been gifted to you. Like, I mean, like that came through somebody else. I mean, like I listened to nothing but like Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals and jazz when I was in high school. And my parents actually had like a couple albums that I would listen to over and over again, like Elton John's Greatest Hits, and like Your Song was just an amazing thing to be, a young kid and listen to. And the Eagles Hotel California, but so that came from them, not that they intentionally gifted it to me. It was just the only records we had there, and I would come home and put headphones on and just listen to them. And I got to college and then discovered classic rock, which I never listened to. And somebody gave me, played Quadrophenia, and like I literally just like I took a drive by myself a couple months ago and realized that like I could listen to side 1 all the way down to Redondo Beach, and then side 2 would get me all the way back home. Just in that one drive, and that somebody gifted that to me. My brother Mike here, made sent me mixtapes of Hank Williams and Johnny Cash, and I became like a huge Johnny Cash fan because he shared that with me, you know, like, so, and then that was all through the American Recordings years too. So I had all the background stuff that he listened to. So I think that's even better than like finding something on your own is having something gifted to you, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's a big part of the comic book, by the way, Ryan. And I think those touch points that we all share, which is why I think this book is something that people will appreciate. It's gonna tug at heartstrings, because I mean, there are certain records that have been ruined for me because of certain people that A, might have stolen them from my record collection, or B, dumped me. You know, you always knew how much time you had with, you know, if somebody came over to hang out with you, like you could make out to Young Americans, you know, like the first side, and then you'd know that that person has to leave or whatever. I think that what you're saying, Rod, you know, with people gifting you things, you know, yes, it's the mixtape, but it's also the album and playing it in the order it was conceived, or it was, you know, signed off on by the songwriter. You know, like I think about, that's the one thing I think about, which is going to age me. And my son just walked by, and he'll probably punch me when he walks back to his room. But it's like these kids, you know, kids don't know about the thrill of the quest. And they also don't know about sometimes the storytelling of an album. Like think about Bowie, okay? Like the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, and Diamond Dogs. Like Diamond Dogs is sometimes my favorite album. I mean, I go back and forth with Station to Station, but it's Big Brother, it's 1984. And it's also the story of my life. You know, like that's just how it is. Like so many of Bowie albums, particularly from The Men Who Sold the World all the way through to Scary Monsters and Super Creeps, and all of Roxy Music's catalog. They tell stories. They are a 180 from the one that came before, and are magnificent on different levels, including the cover art and the game, right? Incredible.
I don't know, there's something to be said for the shuffle generation though too. I mean, like now any artist can have like their whole repertoire of music, you know, served up together as a you know, to listen to and appreciate as a random grouping, rather than like the record company saying like, okay, an LP is 12 minutes per side. And so, you know, I mean, you have to like sort of like artificially like, and some of them, you're right, some of them did it very well, and the albums were thematic and one song goes into the other, but then a lot of people have like bad songs on good albums, and that's why, because they needed something else to throw on there to fill it out. So there's something nice about just judging the music, the songs for the songs, and the good ones will rise to the top and the bad ones will be forgotten, you know?
There's something also to be said about this, you know, the Spotify and shuffle generation. And I'm a big fan of the New Pornographers and Destroyer, and, you know, all the individual acts of the people in the New Pornographers. And the last show that my partner and I went to before the pandemic was Destroyer. And we were, you know, the guy is like 46 years old, and we were like two of the oldest people there, and we called it the Thanks Spotify concert, because we knew everybody else was there because of Spotify, and how, you know, a dude who's 46 years old wouldn't normally appeal to somebody who's 23. I mean, let's, you know, call a spade a spade. So you know, unless it was like Bowie or Roxy Music or somebody who's really that well established. But, you know, this is a Canadian act, middle-aged, and a room packed with people well under 30. So, you know, that's a pretty cool effect of the whole Spotify thing.
It is. I will give you that.
That, and my kids coming to me and saying, "Hey, have you ever heard of blah blah blah?" And it's somebody like David Bowie. Have you ever heard of David Bowie? Yeah.
I was going to say,
have you ever heard of Nirvana? Yeah.
I do want to shout out, you know, Mike Allred's doing that print. If you guys haven't checked out the book he drew about Bowie that came out a year and a half ago, it's phenomenal. The art is just amazing. Mike Allred's one of the best artists in the business too, and Yeah, that Bowie book is just it's breathtaking. And it's funny you mentioned about the crowd. I felt the opposite when I went to see. I took my wife for it was either her sobriety birthday or her birthday to the Eagles, and everyone around us was older. That like at least by 15 to 20 years, it felt like. And I was like, damn, dude, we're like the only young people. Why aren't anybody else? Why isn't everybody else enjoying the Eagles? And they killed it. I mean, they're amazing. And same thing with Fleetwood Mac when we went to see Fleetwood Mac. But yeah, I think there's also something to be said though. I do like the shuffle stuff, like that you guys said. But when I used to get CDs before like digital stuff really blew up, I used to just put my headphones on. I would listen to the album from beginning to end. Yes, there's some bad songs, but I felt like there's a reason that they're in the order they're in, and this is the way they're meant to be listened to. And maybe but I kind of missed that. I miss that. I still will buy CDs. I won't buy digitally because I just like having the physical copy of stuff. Same thing with like comics, Shelly. Like I won't, even if I have something digital like Insider Art, like I needed it in print. Like I like it's the aesthetic needed in my hand.
It's tangible.
When we were at the station, like we were switching over from LP to CDs, and we used to announce when we were playing a song off a compact disc. It was like some like selling point to the audience or something. And now off the compact disc player. And then eventually, like we stopped saying that because it was like, oh, duh,
Yeah. I do want to like ask before I let you guys go. I do want you guys could each like kind of tease like we can expect from your individual stories that we're going to.
Okay.
So, sorry. Whoever wants to start.
Rod's like, hey, Mike, let's do something. Tell me a story and I'll animate it. And I had to think hard about some things that happened to me during my college radio and working at the college radio that wouldn't be too blue, as they say. And I thought of some stuff, and I just sent Rod an email about a bunch of real stuff that actually happened. And lo and behold, Rod animated. He combined a couple of things that actually really truly happened, and he put them into one story. And I read it. I'm like, wow, he did it. He nailed it. He actually took two things, combined them, and there they are. And
well, I didn't animate it, but I did draw it.
I didn't mean to say that, right? But I mean, one of the most embarrassing things was that I had to read the, I enjoyed playing the music. I didn't care about the news or the sports or any of that. But I had to read the news and the sports one day, and I had to pronounce all these female tennis players' last names, and I had no clue whatsoever on how to say them. And I totally screwed it up, and it was embarrassing. And, I was a young college student. I didn't care to play my records. But it was, in retrospect, it was, anyway, he drew it in the comic strip, and you'll see it, and it's actually
there's a joke like that in the old WKRP in Cincinnati TV show where he says Chai Rodriguez for the golfer. Chichi Rodriguez is the other guy. Right. So maybe you stole it from that.
Yeah, I guess.
I think Brother Mike, I'm not even sure if he knows this, but he's kind of the reluctant hero of the book because he has shared so many amazing remembrances and photos of everybody who's contributed, including Barbara, who has done tremendous work, and Heather, who sent many, many pictures. I have to say that I think, Mike, you have been like so great about just sharing all of your experiences, and you kept a lot of photos, and I've been taking so many different things that you share with me that, believe me, you'll see. I promise you, I will not embarrass you publicly with this, but there's so many things that link the book together, because in comics, when you have an anthology and you curate it, you really want to have a through line. You want to have at least a couple of jokes that translate, that carry through the entire book. So I know I talked to you about you're going to have a cameo on the back cover, and it involves something that you shared with me about a purple and gold cape. Why don't you just share that story? Just because I love that story. And
I will share that story. So there was one summer, I believe it was the summer of 1986, when I stayed up in Ithaca in my college town to do radio for the summer and also work at Chelsea Records. And it was the only summer I spent in Ithaca. And if you stayed for the summer, you could actually get paid, $3.35 an hour to work on the
It's the greatest thing, greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna play records, work in the record store. This is what a great summer I'm gonna have. And so I would often have the late night shift. I'd work like 7 to midnight, or I'd work from like 11 to 5 in the morning. I would, since I could, and I was living in College Town for the summer. College Town was literally like across this bridge, or like down a hill and then up a hill. So it was just easier for me to sleep in the AM station that was closed for the summer across the hallway, which for some reason was open, or I put a key in the door. So I would sleep there. And I don't know how, I think I went into the drama department, and I found this cape that was a purple cape with like gold stars and moons on it. And it looked like something, I don't know, Merlin the magician would wear. This cape would become my blanket for sleeping in the AM station when I worked a late night shift, and I would just go back to College Town during the day. So I actually slept with this. I slept with this cape while I stayed there for the summer. I held on to the cape, and when I had my East Village apartment for 23 years, this cape actually covered the window to block the sun from coming in. I don't like the sun. So I still have that cape somewhere.
That's awesome.
Cape somewhere in a box.
Maybe magic powers.
Yeah, maybe.
It must. Well, it plays a part in the comic, so I'm not going to, spoiler alert, I'm not going to say any more.
Barbara, you want to share?
It's about how music and friendship that I experienced during college radio really had a profound effect on me in a very, very positive way. And there's the 10-second summary.
Awesome.
And it involves
heartwarming. Of course, it involves game theory.
Okay.
And getting something for free.
Awesome. And Shelly, I just want you to give us one more. Can you give us one more for the book? I know I said I don't want to be spoiled, but now I kind of am curious after the Sanford Green reveal. So,
well, something that you might not know, just to go back to Mike Allred for a second, he was actually a DJ as well. He was my first friend in comics. I was working at Comico, and I was an editorial assistant, and I was just like sending out rejection letters and comps. And he was submitting his work. He was a DJ in the Army. He was stationed in Berlin. And so he was playing tons of music like we played, like at ICB. He was playing a lot of the new wave and synth pop, techno pop. And he was a huge Bowie fan. And I knew that from looking at his art. So my boss at the time forced me to send him a rejection letter. And it was like your standard, thanks, but you're not quite up to the skill level we require. So I wrote him a little note, like a personal note that said, hey, I know my boss said see above, but I think your art's cool and I'll bet you love Bowie. And that was just like the first connection we had, and we've been great friends ever since then. But, one of the reasons I asked him to join the book is because, we have shared a love for Bowie since that moment. We met back in, I guess, 88. And yeah, he's as into music as we are. And his DJ years are as important to him as his comic book, illustration years. So that's a pretty cool thing. We've got other artists who I'm not going to mention right now, Ryan, because I think you might lose it. But we've got some big names. We've got the person who's illustrating my story, it must be said, his name is Mark Stafford, and he is phenomenal. I guarantee you he's going to be a household name in the States once people feast their eyeballs on the story he did for me. I happened to discovered his work actually this summer. He's not young, no offense, but he has been around for a while, but I didn't really know his work that well. But he posted this incredible album cover, pastiche of the Ramones. It was for a commission, and I saw it and I literally stopped in my tracks, and I was like, I got to work with that guy. He's so good. So somebody had accused me of actually just creating this entire project, Heavy Rotation, just so I could work with him, just so I could have him draw Joe Strummer. And by the way, I did not make him draw me making out with Joe Strummer. There's a group that Barbara probably started. But
maybe
Strummer is on the listener line in my story, and it's all about my overnight and like just what it was like walking to the station at 12:30 at night. If you could stay alive, you know, it was like -20 degrees. And a lot of people were coming back from like being drunk downtown, and there was no campus security. It's not like now. It was like, you know, I was 5'2". I could have been abducted by giant pod people. You know, it was like, it was a pretty scary thing just to get to the station. Then you had to get the attention of the person who was DJing to actually let you in. So you might be waiting outside, freezing your butt off for 40 minutes anyway. But wow, what power, what control to be on the air like that. There was nothing like it.
Yeah, and I will second that. His art is amazing. I glanced at your story again. I didn't want to spoil it. I want to read it in print. But this project sounds really fucking dope. I'm very excited for it. I know everybody that's backing it is very excited for it. I want to thank everyone for taking time out to talk with me about it today. Shelly, if you could quickly just share, or I guess like just kind of tell us where they can get the Kickstarter online. I'll drop the links below.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have another 10 days of funding. Heavy Rotation is through Kickstarter. So the link is kickstarter.com/projects/sxbond/heavy-rotation. And there are pledge levels for every bank account. Even a college student can afford getting our book. $3 for the PDF. We've got a swag bag, which is like a signature Shelly Bond item with most of my comic books and graphic novels. So there are going to be some very cool stickers, postcards, and you know, it's not the 80s without pins. So we'll definitely have some really cool badges and other great things. We've got stretch goals that we can crush. So yeah, thank you so much, Ryan, for like spending your Saturday with us and for spreading and always supporting my work. You're the best. And I'll remind my dad to send you that check.
Okay, thank you. All right, guys. Thanks again. And everybody watching, or if you're listening, make sure you go back to the Kickstarter. The link's in the comments down below. And I'll talk to you guys later.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ryan.